All right, everybody, welcome to How to Interview in a Competitive Job Market. My name is Albert Chen. I'll be hosting for today with our wonderful co host, Cory Hiromoto. As many of you have discovered and learned, we are in a tough job market. It's the toughest market in a number of years. And as you know, when it is a tough job market, interviewing is tougher than ever. And what that really means is that your margin for error is thin. And so your ability to tell the right story and answer in a way that reduces you as a risk, among many other things, is going to help you stand out as a candidate. And so to talk about this today, I have Cory Hiromoto of CareerShakers.com. My name is Albert, and I am with Albert's List. And today we're going to talk a little bit about this as well as showcase some of the opportunities that you have to help increase your interviewing skills. So without further ado, Cory, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you. Thank you for being back as usual, in addition to our mock interviews.
Thank you everyone for tuning in, especially on this Monday. I know Mondays can be rough for everyone, so we really do appreciate it. And thank you for wherever you're tuning in from. Happy Earth Day. I tried to wear the greenest, most earthy shirt that I owned while still being business professional. And so hopefully everyone's doing something nice as well. And yeah, as Albert mentioned, we're going to be talking about how to interview in a super competitive job market. For those of you who do know me, you may recognize me from our weekly mock interview sessions that I host in Albert's List. For those of you who don't recognize me or know me, I am also a career coach with Albert. We've done a bunch of different workshops together, and this is actually going to be a new and improved version of our how to interview in a super competitive job market bootcamp. And so today we kind of wanted to talk about a few different things. But first, we want to make sure that everyone is able to build their network and grow. So if you are just tuning in, make sure you use the everyone option in the Zoom chat. Introduce yourself, talk about what you're looking for, and how people can potentially help you. Perfect. Now, before we talk about what we're going to be talking about, which is interviewing and how to do it in a competitive job market, how to stand out, get more job offers, get yourself into get access into some of the hidden jobs that companies may be hiding from you. I have a very quick pop quiz, so feel free to use the chat function here. What do you all think is the most important part of the job search? If you could only pick one thing, what do you think is the most important thing to help you get a job? There's an overwhelming amount of networking being thrown in the chat right now. Remember, this is the most important part of the job search. We can all argue that all the things on here are important, but what is the most important thing? I would say it's almost a tie between B and C. Some people are changing their answers back and forth right now, but spoiler alert, I'll just be honest. As a recruiter, I'll tell you, it's interviewing. Interviewing is the most important part of your job search. Now, all these things are important. Your resume is what you're going to need to apply to a job and is actually going to get your foot in the door. So a recruiter finds you, a hiring manager wants to talk to you. Your resume allows you to get access to interview. Very rarely nowadays do people just get to skip interviews and you just get a job offer right away. Even if you know somebody like a CEO or the hiring manager or a VP, you're still going to have to do at least one interview before you can get a job. And so very rarely will you get to skip everything just because you have a super awesome resume. Now, your resume is definitely important, and you will not be able to get access to as many interviews if you don't have a good job. If you don't have a well formatted and good looking resume. But networking is also really important, right? Networking gives you access to jobs that you may not have been able to get. Maybe your resume may not be so strong, or you may not be the perfect fit for a role, but if you network in the appropriate ways, you get the right introductions, you get a strong referral from somebody in the company. Networking also gets your foot in the door, which will allow you an opportunity to interview and potentially get a job offer. But everything basically leads towards interviewing, right? Your resume, the purpose of the resume is to get an interview. The purpose of networking is to get an interview. Reference checks. Reference checks are only done usually after the interviews are done to make sure that we're not hiring somebody or we didn't miss something in the interview process that is glaring or that would make you a bad hire or some type of flight risk. And so, honestly, interviews are the most important part of your job search because you'll never really get to skip over that. And this is where hiring managers get to choose who is going to be the best person to hire. Now, just think about it, right? Let's say you work in marketing, okay? And right now, a super competitive job market. But even if it's not a super competitive job market, let's go back to 2021 and 2022, where there was so many jobs. There was more jobs than there were applicants, right? If you're hiring for a marketing position, how many people who say that they work in marketing are going to apply for your job? Probably like 100 people, right? And so on paper, everyone's resume, it's kind of going to look the same. You got a marketing manager at this company, you got a marketing manager at this company, you got a marketing manager at this company. Everyone's applying for your job. How are you going to hire the best one? Well, you're not going to hire the best one purely based on a resume, right? Because what if they lied on their resume? What if they tried to take credit for someone else on their resume? How do you actually tell if someone's good at their job? Well, other than hiring them and seeing if they're good at the job, the only other way to see if someone's actually good is interviews. And that's why it's the most important part of your job search. Okay. Just checking the chat real quick, making sure I didn't miss any questions. So, yes, interviewing is going to be the most important part because it's going to be the biggest barrier. That's how they're going to choose who they're going to hire. Because you may be good at networking, you may have someone giving you a referral, but there's probably some other person interviewing for the same job as you that's also networked to get a referral. And so, how they're going to choose which one? It's your interviews. And that's why we're all here. And we went through our introductions earlier, but feel free to check out both of us on LinkedIn. And we both have different YouTube channels. I've got one, Career Shakers. Albert's got Albert's List. Check out all of our videos as well. We've got stuff for interviewing, resume writing, LinkedIn, networking, career switches, salary negotiations, etc. Okay. Now, this is something we get asked all the time, especially when we are organizing these types of workshops and things like that, is are we actually good at helping people? We have done a few of these workshops already, and we have some testimonials here on the screen. And I actually think it's really powerful to have these, I would say, like impromptu testimonials. Yes, they look slightly less professional, I'll be honest. It looks less professional, but these are much harder to fake, right? In my opinion, it's pretty easy to have a nice website and have like a testimonial section, and then you say like Jane said, quote, "You're such a great coach. You helped me get my job," end quote. Those are kind of hard to see if they're true or not, and you don't really know who Jane is, and like, did she really say that? And so these are actual screenshots from messages that Albert and I have received, thanking us for some of the coaching and guidance that we've given them as it comes to interviews and helping them land a role. So in today's session, this is the basic topics that we're going to cover, but if there is something that's not on here that you wanted us to cover, utilize the chat function. Albert and I will be checking it all the time, making sure you get as much value as possible and answering all your questions. But the first thing that we want to help you all decipher is, do you actually need help? Like, how good are your interviewing skills? If your interviewing skills are really good, then you're probably doing all the right things already and keep doing what you're doing, right? Now, if you find out that maybe there are some potential areas of improvement, what would you actually be learning in our bootcamp? 5 weeks to interview in a competitive job market. And then how is the bootcamp going to be structured so that you're actually going to be able to build new skills and improve your interviews over time? And then, of course, we're going to have time at the end for Q&A. Someone's doing a career switch. I love that. I myself did a career switch. I used to do finance and accounting, and now I'm in recruiting. Perfect. Okay. So, have any of you ever been told any of these things after you've done an interview? Maybe some of you have applied to some jobs, you talk to a recruiter, they schedule you to talk to a hiring manager, maybe even you made it to the final rounds of interviews, but unfortunately, you didn't get the job. And your recruiter calls you, or there's a hiring manager that calls you, and they tell you one of these four things. Any of these sound pretty familiar? Yeah, I can see it in the chat. Seems like people have heard a lot of these things before. And honestly, it is recruiter talk, because a lot of companies are not able to provide actual specific feedback from your interviews to candidates, just because it opens up a bunch of legal risk if we were able to share transparently what went down in the interviews, what questions you got wrong, what skills you may potentially be missing, etc. So we have to give you these general statements that are not as helpful in terms of improving your interview skills over time, but also doesn't open us up to any potential legal risk. And honestly, all of these are just code words for your interviews didn't go as well as we wanted them to. For example, right on the first one, oh, so sorry, we actually needed to hire somebody with a little bit more digital marketing experience, right? That's not true because they already saw your resume. They talked to you on the phone. They thought you were a good fit and they invited you to do 4 more hours of interviews. So they already knew what your experience was and was not before you decided to come and do these interviews. And so they didn't really need someone with more experience. Someone just interviewed slightly better than you. Or, oh, you were such a good person, a good candidate, but we were actually looking for someone who specifically knows how to do digital marketing for Taiwan over Facebook and Instagram via third-party APIs utilizing ChatGPT. And oh, you just didn't have that. So I'm so sorry, but can we keep in touch? Right? They already knew you didn't have that experience, but they chose to interview you anyways. So why would that be the real excuse as to why you didn't get picked? Or you weren't the right fit, but they looked at your resume and they chose to interview you, so you probably were the right fit. Someone just had slightly better answers than you. We hired an internal candidate. Could be true, but most of the time they're going to want to hire the best person for the role. Just because you already worked at that company doesn't mean you're the best fit for a position. If you interview better and you're able to demonstrate your skills, you have better accomplishments, they would choose you instead. Yep, and also sometimes you may just get ghosted because people just don't want to have awkward conversations. Yep, yep. So if any of these are familiar to you and you've heard these, then it's code word for the interviews we thought were going to be better, but it wasn't quite as strong. And I see someone raise their hand. Feel free to use the chat function because we won't be able to have you come and speak. So use that and check it. All right. So let's first figure out if you all are even in the right place. How good are your interviewing skills? Because if they're really solid and they're good, probably don't need to take a boot camp. So I think this is actually something that's really important that a lot of people don't really think about and don't try to focus on. And that's, what do you actually need to stand out when you're interviewing in a super competitive job market like right now? All of you are going to have very similar resumes. All of you are going to claim to have very similar accomplishments. All of you are going to be improving processes, taking initiative, working late, making sacrifices, working hard, getting strong referrals, getting good reference checks, right? All of you are going to have amazing backgrounds. And so, how do you actually stand out? Well, in order to get hired and to stand out, you're going to need to figure out what your special secret sauce is or what your differentiators are. And honestly, when we're coaching people, that's really what's missing. A lot of the time, people are able to check the boxes, as they say, for what a hiring manager is looking for. But just by checking the boxes, you're not going to be able to stand out and really impress somebody. And so thinking about what makes you unique, what are your unique accomplishments or your unique skill sets, or how you've been able to creatively solve problems or even maybe identify problems are some examples of ways where you can actually stand out from everybody else, and making sure that you actually know what your secret sauce is, your differentiators, and then being able to incorporate those into your answers and stories is what it takes for you to actually get hired. So I'm leading with this to kind of give everybody a little bit of a teaser and to kind of prime things before we go through these next exercises to help you figure out how good your interviewing skills are. Wouldn't you say it's possible for another interview to have a leg up with unique experience, especially in this market, even though you did well? It is possible, definitely. It's definitely possible. But how are they going to know that the other person has a leg up over you or that they truly have a unique experience if you also weren't able to demonstrate something unique to yourself? You two could have very different specialized skill sets, but being able to present them in a certain way, talk about your accomplishments, walk them through your projects and how you've been able to solve problems is also a way to stand out and be unique. All right, so first question, true or false? This is a fun thought exercise. And I use marketing because I think everyone, regardless of your background, no matter what job you work in, everyone kind of understands sales and marketing. So a lot of my examples will be focused there just because I wanted it to be applicable and understandable for everybody. But very first question, true or false? If you're someone who works in marketing, if you say in an interview that you were able to increase revenue by 20%, that makes you great at marketing. This is your secret sauce. This is your differentiator. This is what makes you the best marketing candidate is if you can tell them that you increased revenue by 20%. True or false? Some falls. According to the sales, 20% needs any increase is good. Any increase is good. True. Oh, there's a lot of trues actually. Depends on other candidates. Ah, that's interesting. Would want to know how you did it. Okay, so this is false. This is false. And I'll tell you why. And hopefully this opens up a lot of new ideas and we'll reframe how all of you are thinking about interviewing and giving answers, right? So by default, if you work in marketing, what is your job? What is the whole purpose of a marketing department? Well, the whole purpose of a marketing department is to spend less money than they make, right? That's the whole purpose of marketing. You're gonna spend money in marketing and hopefully getting an ROI on it that gives you more revenue than what you put in. That's marketing's entire function. That's your literal job. And so if you say, I am the best marketing manager because I was able to increase revenue, I would say that does not make you special because that's your job, right? If you worked in marketing and you weren't able to increase revenue at all, then you're probably bad at marketing and you're not even doing a good job. And so you can't rely purely on results sometimes to help you stand out in a competitive job market, right? Just relying on a really impactful, powerful ending of your story. If you're thinking about the star method, right? The result, just having a really powerful result isn't enough to get you hired these days. Because other candidates are also going to be saying that they increased revenue by 21%, 22%, 19%, right? And so as a hiring manager, if someone says they increased marketing, they increased revenue by 19%, and then you come in and you're like, well, I increased revenue by 20%. Am I going to hire you just because of 1% difference? Probably not. It's how you increase marketing, right? The how here is actually how you're going to be able to stand out, and that's what's going to make you great. Okay, next thought exercise. So here, I don't want you to answer the question, okay? But just imagine you're in an interview and somebody asks you, tell me about yourself. Put in the chat, what do you think they're actually asking you here? What's the purpose of this question? What do they really want to know? Why would the interviewer ask you, tell me about yourself? Take a stab at it. Why do you think they're asking you this question? So there's a general theme here, and hopefully all of you are able to see it in the chat, right? So there's a lot of people who think it's why should we hire you? Why would we want to hire you? There's also another group of people who are saying, are you the right fit for the role? And then there are also some people who are saying, oh, this is like a warm-up question. They're trying to see your communication, your confidence. So, spoiler alert, this is what they are really asking. This is the point of the question. This is why someone would ask you, tell me about yourself, or why should we hire you, or walk me through your resume. They've obviously seen your resume before they've chosen to interview you. Either they've seen your LinkedIn or they've seen your resume and they're now talking to you on the phone, right? So, why would they need a recap of your resume if they've already seen it? So, this is what they're really asking based on the responsibilities and scope is very important. Based on the responsibility and scope of the role in which I'm hiring for, why are you the best candidate? Now, that second to last word is so important. Best candidate. Almost 90% of you in the chat use the word fit. Why am I a good fit for this role? Fit. Fit is not enough to get hired. You need to find a way to stand out in a super competitive job market. Just checking the boxes and being a fit is not going to get you hired. It's simply not. It's not enough. It's not enough. What do you need? Well, you need something to differentiate yourself. You need some kind of secret sauce that allows you to show them that you are the best candidate for the role. I'll say it again. If you take nothing away from from what Albert and I are putting on today, it's being a fit is not enough. So, how do you properly answer, tell me about yourself? Well, the first thing that we always recommend is you actually need to get some context first from the hiring manager or the recruiter in order to understand what they truly are looking for. Yes, you may have a job description, but job descriptions don't tell the full story. There may be certain skills that are super important for them on that job description and some that are less important. So if you didn't have those, it's not a big deal. There also may be some hidden skills that they're really looking for, but they didn't want to put it on the job description. So getting them to first explain to you what they're actually looking for and getting a sense of the scope of work is going to be very important. For example, if they say, hey, I'm looking to hire a marketing manager who's also managed large teams of at least 15 people, because you're going to be managing a team of around 15 people. So should you lead off your tell me about yourself by saying, oh, well, I'm a marketing manager and I've been managing teams of 5, right? So right away, are you a good fit? Are you the best candidate for the role? Well, no, because their first thought's going to be, well, they haven't managed large enough teams. They've only managed teams of 5 people, right? So if you get that context first, then you'll know how to shape your answer to give them the context that they need to know that you are the best candidate for the role. How do you know what your competitive advantage is compared to the other candidates that they have? Well, everyone's going to come in with something very unique and different, and there's a few areas you can look at. And I would suggest you stray away from just being results oriented, right? So if you think about the 5 questions, the who, what, when, where, and how. So somewhere in those 5, you need to figure out where it is that you have a competitive advantage that's something unique over what other candidates have done, right? Um, why would they not put stuff in the job description? Well, actually, I'll tell you from a legal and HR perspective, um, what we write in a job description in terms of MQs and PQs will actually influence how we're able to hire somebody. And so that's why some jobs may have very few MQs, but a lot of PQs, because MQs are ones that we legally need to make sure any candidate we hire for the role is able to meet. And so why sometimes we may not put some things in there is because some things may be really nice to have, but not a total requirement. Also, if we find someone who's a total rock star, maybe you're a little bit more junior than your level or experience indicates, but you're a high performer, you've gotten tons of promotions really quickly. We'd obviously want to hire you if you're a top performer who's been promoted really early. And so we want to give ourselves the flexibility to hire rock stars if we find them. And so that's why we may not put everything into a job description because it's somewhat legally binding if we were to get audited. How do you properly answer this question with a recruiter in a phone screen if you don't have the full context of the role based on the JD but love the company? Great question. So before you answer this, you say, "Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Recruiter, thank you so much. I've actually got a wide range of experience, as you've probably seen on my resume. So just to make sure that I can actually tell you I'm the right fit for the role and I can tailor my experience, can you give me a little bit more context of what it is you're specifically looking for when it comes to insert job description? Marketing manager, digital marketing, sales, AI consultant, whatever." Oh, MQ, minimum qualifications. That's what they typically put as like their first set of bullets, and then companies put preferred qualifications after that. All right, so how's everyone doing on this quiz so far? Everyone's nailing all these questions, super easy, right? Thanks for the thumbs up. All right, next one. True or false? I interview people for my company. I'm a hiring manager, so I don't need to practice for interviews because I already know what good looks like. I can show up because I interview people at my regular job. Okay, this one's pretty easy. Everyone said it's false. So thank you. Just wanted to make sure that everyone knows just being an interviewer does not count as practicing for interviews. So that one was pretty easy. Everyone got that right. Okay, next one. The best way to answer a hypothetical interview question is which of the following? Now, for those of you who don't know, a hypothetical interview question actually is very popular these days. A lot of the big tech companies use them, and therefore a lot of other industries have adopted these as well. Also, hypothetical questions are really the only questions that hiring managers can use to figure out if you actually know how to do something. So a hypothetical question is usually something that sounds like, "Hey, if we hired you here in this job and we asked you to do blank or solve this problem, how would you do it?" That's a hypothetical question, right? So these are the hardest ones because you can't tell a story. You don't get to go, "Oh, let me tell you about a time where I did that," because they want to know how you would do it at their company. So how do you answer this type of question? It's like everyone in the chat already got this one right. So the answer is D. That's how you properly answer these. But I can see some questions and there is some confusion, right? So everyone's probably heard of the STAR method or the CAR method for interviews, right? If you ever Google like how to prepare for an interview, every blog post, career coach, YouTube video will talk about STAR method or CAR method, or there's some type of acronym that they use for interviews. The STAR method is basically just a framework that you use. It's like an outline on how to structure an interview answer. So the S stands for situation. Just tell them what the situation was. The T is the tasks that you were specifically responsible for doing. The actions are how you actually executed that task or how you solved the problem. And then R stands for results or the ending of your story, right? That's the general framework that people recommend you follow in order to answer an interview question. But you're only supposed to use the STAR method for behavioral questions. And so a behavioral question is like, tell me about a time where you had a conflict with a coworker and how you resolved it. Or give me an example of a time where you designed a marketing program that had a successful launch. Right. So they're asking you to tell them a story about something you've done in the past. And so that's a behavioral interview question. And that's when you would use the STAR method. You would not use it to answer the hypothetical question because they want to know how you would do it for their company in the future. So you can't really talk about what you did in the past because it's going to be different. You also shouldn't ask them how they would do it because that would be not answering the question. You would be like, "Hey, I don't know how to answer this. Can you answer this for me?" Um, Now, some people have actually thought that it's better to give a really short answer here because you don't want to be wrong. And so it's better to give a super short answer and then have them ask you lots of questions to get more information out of you. But the problem with that approach is that they'd much rather you give them a comprehensive solution all the way to the end and then talking about why you chose to do certain things, because that actually shows your depth and breadth of knowledge in a particular skill set or domain area. If you only give very short answers, for them, they won't actually get a good grasp of your technical knowledge and if you actually know how to solve certain problems. And as just a general tip, if you're in an interview and the interviewer has to ask you a lot of follow-up questions, the interview is not going well. Definitely not going well. This is good info, but why is there so much trickery involved in the interview process? Why don't they ask us what they need to know? Well, they do ask you, right? They are asking you interview questions, and then they're giving candidates an equal and fair opportunity to respond to these interview questions, and they're going to judge you and rank you based on who they want to hire, purely based on the answers that you give, right? Oh, sorry about that. I think my headset died. Can you all hear me okay? Can I just get like a thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay. Apologies for that. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, so why is there so much trickery? Well, I wouldn't say it's trickery, but they are giving everyone a fair and equal chance to answer certain interview questions, and then they're going to stack rank you based on how you're able to answer them. Now, they don't want to give too many hints, right? Because then obviously, then they won't know who's the natural best fit for the role if they keep giving you all the hints you need to get to an answer. What about launching into a story of how you solved a similar problem in the past? Yeah, so unfortunately, that's not what they're looking for. Because if they wanted to know how you did it in the past, they just would have asked you a behavioral question, right? They just would have said, "Oh, tell me about a time where you had to launch a new product in a different country." As opposed to, imagine you were here at my company and you needed to launch a brand new product for us. How would you do that? They don't want you to go, well, let me tell you about about a product I launched at my company. And they're going to be like, well, your company is different than my company, right? We have different customers, we've got different technologies. There's so many things that are different. So they want to know how you would do it for them, which honestly is a better interview question. Yes, it's a harder interview question, but it's a way better way to see if someone is actually good at their job. How much pause can we have before deciding on the interview answer we are giving? I would say like a couple seconds. You don't want it to go longer than like 10 seconds, unless you're saying like, oh, can I get a second to think? So, all right, cool. Oh, okay. Let me just check time here. Okay, 5:36. We're doing good. We're doing good here. All right. So, based on all these little exercises that we had gone through, how do you all think you did? If you all could rate your interview scales now on a scale of 1 to 5, where would you put yourselves? Fours. Fours are solid. Fours are good. It's a lot of threes, twos. I think four is good, right? But depending on the company you're trying to get into, four may not be enough. If you're trying to get into like a FANG company, right? One of the big tech companies, Google, Amazon, Apple, 4 out of 5 is probably not gonna cut it, right? But if you were looking for like a medium tier company, I think four would probably be solid. Absolutely. But if you're trying to get into your dream company, your dream job right now, 4 is probably not going to cut it. I think in 2021, when there were so many jobs and not enough candidates, I think 4 would have been fine. But you definitely want to be at a 5 out of 5 in this type of competitive market. Okay, so if you realize you do need a little bit of help, you want to improve your interviewing skills, how you can actually stand out, figure out what your secret sauce is so you can actually get more job offers. This is how you can actually get better. So these are the things that you're going to work on and we're going to help you build up on during our time together. So number one, making sure that everyone's got good interviewing fundamentals. Some of you weren't sure what the STAR method is or the CAR method is. Make sure we're going to help you make sure you know what that is and truly master it because that's going to be your building blocks and your foundations that we're going to be able to use in order to add more difficult concepts. Next, we need to make sure that you know what your differentiators are. Now, it's going to be different between depending on the job that you have and what you are trying to do. For example, for some of you who are doing a career switch, the differentiators that you're going to want to make sure you identify in your interview are going to be significantly different than someone who's already in role. Oh, is my audio gone? Uh-oh. Oh, okay. Someone said they can't hear me. Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, so making sure you know what your differentiators are and helping you actually pull those into your stories. I think one of the interesting things that a lot of you will find is if you look at your answers now, like your how you're practicing for interviews, I bet a lot of you think you already have differentiators in your stories and you're wondering why you're still not getting picked. And the truth is probably going to be that you don't actually have something strong enough yet that'll make you stand out comparatively to everyone else. Think about that marketing example, right? If you're saying, "Oh, I did all this amazing work and then boom, revenue went up 15%." Woo, I'm amazing. Hire me. Is that really a differentiator? I don't think so. Next, you need to make sure that you actually have really, really, really good answers for the world's most common interview questions, right? Tell me about yourself. Why should we hire you? What is your greatest weakness? Why do you want to work here? If you have a gap on your resume, they're going to ask you about the gap on your resume, right? If you were laid off, unfortunately, they're going to ask you what happened when you got laid off. You need to know how to answer these super common interview questions because if you can't even get through the basic like warm-up interview questions, there's no way they're going to advance you to the next round. And there's no way that they're going to want to ask you even harder interview questions, which are the ones that actually let you show them your skill set. So being able to make sure you get through the gatekeepers and get through these really common interview questions with the best answers is gonna open a lot more doors for a lot of you. And then, of course, this is something that people have always asked us for, and so we've incorporated this into our boot camp now, is being able to look at a job description for a job that you're going to be interviewing for and being able to analyze that JD and predict the actual interview questions that you're going to be asked. And it is possible. I promise you. I promise you. Because, for example, Albert and I do these mock interview sessions with a different person every single week. And it can be a totally different job. Like one week we'll do sales, the next week we'll work with like a teacher, and the next week it'll be like a project manager, and then the next week it'll be someone who does engineering. And I customize and predict interview questions based on their resume and job descriptions. And you won't believe how many people come back to me and Albert and say that in their interview, they were asked the exact questions that we had practiced together. So it's totally possible for you to actually be able to predict the interview questions that you're going to be asked. And then if you know what interview questions are coming, you're going to have the best possible answers for those. I think in the past, interviews were all about cultural fit, right? And how you would fit well with the team. And if you got a good reference or if you went to Harvard, then you're probably going to get the job, right? And it's all about, well, are you a cool person? Can we hang out with you? Like, would we be comfortable sitting in an office with you for 8 hours a day? I think the competition is so fierce now, and credentials mean less and less, unfortunately. So it's not quite like that anymore. And as Alberta said, for everybody who's attending today's webinar, you get 20% off of our bootcamp. No, no. Oh, sorry, $20. And this shouldn't be inducing anxiety. I think the first the first step in order to actually gain confidence when it comes to interviewing is knowing that you're preparing in the right way, right? Like preparation breeds confidence. And knowing where you may have gaps or where you may have been falling short in your interviews is actually going to increase your confidence and not increase anxiety. Because for me, it can be really nerve-wracking if you're failing consistently, but you don't know why, right? Because they can't give you feedback. But if you can actually diagnose the problem and then work to improve over time, that's going to give you confidence. All right. So, how are we going to structure this and how can we actually give you confidence and reduce that interview anxiety? So, over the 5 weeks, we've structured it in a very specific way. So first, we're going to be building up your fundamentals, covering the interview basics, the STAR methods, common interview questions, etc., and then helping you figure out what your differentiators are. It is going to be different from person to person, but there are some similarities overall broadly that we're going to be able to help each of you work through. Then in weeks 3 and 4, we're going to get into some of the advanced interview techniques and tricks, right? Being able to predict interview questions that you're going to be able to get, being able to understand interview questions and what they're truly asking so that you can actually choose the best story from your resume to share so that you can actually stand out and get a job offer. That's going to be a little bit more of an advanced technique, but it can make huge differences, especially for those of you who are at senior levels like management and executive level. Being able to know which story to tell when you have so much experience is the biggest and most important decision point in an interview. And then, of course, it wouldn't be an interview boot camp if we didn't also teach you how to negotiate for a higher salary after you're done crushing these interviews. Because a lot of you may not know this, but behind the scenes, one of the biggest factors in terms of like how much you can negotiate for a job offer honestly comes down to how well you've interviewed, right? Because it's your leverage point. Yes, you may get competing offers and things, but you may not always have a competing offer. Or if you do have a competing offer, it may not even be higher than what the company would have already paid you. So it doesn't even help you. And so what do you use for leverage? It's your interviews, right? Because when the recruiter goes to the hiring manager and they're like, hey, Cory wants 100K more. Like, can we give him that? Like, that's way out of our range. What's like, how is the hiring manager going to justify that? And they're going to go, no, we should give it to him. Like he crushed all of his interviews. Everybody on the team said that he's the best software engineer that they've ever talked to. We can give him 100K more. It's purely based on your interviews, right? They don't go, "Oh, he wants 100K more. Let me hold on. Let me look at his resume. Let me look at his resume and see if he deserves that much more money." Um, ooh, this bullet here. Yeah, yeah. He said he increased revenue by 20%. So we should probably give him $100,000 more. That's never how it goes, right? Because the resume doesn't even matter anymore. It's all about the impression that you gave and what you were able to demonstrate during your interviews. Okay, the chat was blowing up. And let me just take a look through that. And yes, someone in the chat did mention sometimes when they open up a job search, they may have a particular candidate that they already favor for getting a job, right? And sometimes that may even be you. Maybe you got a really strong referral from somebody on the team or someone in the company, and then that allowed you to get an interview. So you may be the front runner, or you may be competing with the front runner. But guess what? It's not a guarantee because if you just have an average interview, even if you're the front runner, the person that everybody was so excited about based on your resume or some referral from some VP, if you have like an average interview and then someone comes out of nowhere who they weren't expecting and they blow everybody away in their interviews with their stories, who do you think they're going to hire? What about entry to mid-level marketing jobs, marketing specialist or manager? Yes, what about those types of jobs? Go ahead and put it in the chat what you wanted to know. So the range does not make a difference in the JD. Oh, the salary range. The salary range is what we legally have to share in certain states for what our base salary range is supposed to be. But we can always go above it if we need to, depending on the level of the person that we're trying to hire and the interview performance. Any advice or questions to ask a recruiter during a product manager interview after a strong referral? So, product management actually is one of those really tricky areas where your domain knowledge and the industry that you currently work in plays an overwhelmingly unfortunate bias towards who they're going to end up hiring in an interview, right? So, in general, if you're applying for a product manager role, they ideally want to hire a product manager who's already built the exact same product that they would want to hire, right? That just makes sense. It's one of the only roles where it's like overly biased towards previous and past experience, other than like executive level roles. Same thing for an executive level position. Very rarely will they be willing to take a chance on someone at an executive level and hire somebody who's never really done something before. So PM is unfortunately kind of one of those areas where it's all about domain product fit. But, but, if they chose to interview you and invite you to final rounds, then to them, the domain area is actually not that important. And that's something a lot of the PMs kind of get tripped up on, right? They're like, oh, like the recruiter will call them after, 8 hours of interviews, and they're like, you did so good in the interviews, but we actually need someone who's built this very specific product before, and you haven't built it, so sorry, but you did so good in your interviews. That's not the real reason. They already knew you didn't build that product before, but they invited you to final rounds. They invested 8 hours of their time to interview you. So even in those scenarios, it's about how you differentiate yourself. And it's more about the how than the what. Australia, welcome. Generally, the larger companies will be able to provide work sponsorship. Very rarely will like startups and things be able to do so. Um, but also they're only like getting these work sponsorships, right, are super expensive. And so they're only able to justify it for either really senior level roles or highly specialized roles. So I think a controllership role would probably qualify, um, but it would have to be at a much larger company. Oh yes, this boot camp would be relevant for everybody, right? We're gonna go through concepts and things that will cover like advanced interviewing stuff. It's gonna be applicable for everyone, regardless of role. All right, so we can just jump into the Q&A section here. There is my business email. We've got Albert's list. Make sure you are joined in on the Albert's list group. We've got one in the Bay Area, Los Angeles, and we have also got YouTube channels as well for more information.
Yeah, what I want to also add to this is that it's not just going to be 5 weeks of Corey and or I, mostly Corey, speaking at you, but it's also going to be office hours that we host, either I or Corey or together, where we answer your questions in a non-academic setting after we teach the course material. There's also going to be a LinkedIn chat that we use specifically as well. So we'll all connect with you on LinkedIn and you can tap right into our networks to see if there's anyone that can help you. And then if you're located in the San Francisco Bay Area, I also host mid boot camp happy hours over at the Devil's Canyon Brewery out in Belmont. So there's also a chance for all of you to meet up in person, where you can meet each other and say hello. And they are friends of Albert's List, the head of HR, who is hiring over there for I think a salesperson. Welcomes us with open arms and including free beer. So there's a chance for a lot of different ways to engage with us, and so yeah, if this is something that you're interested in, we definitely would love to have you. And if this is something that you haven't decided on yet, we're also hosting this webinar again next Monday, where you can come back and really learn and figure out whether this program is right for you, because we do want to help you out in this very complex market right now. So Yeah. Any other questions that we have? Yeah, so Corey, I think the question that we've gotten a few times throughout this right now is um, folks who don't know what their secret sauce is, which I think is really important, especially if you're about to head into an interview. So, any tips on that?
Um, I think going through those 5 questions, right? Who, what, when, where, why, how, will help you uncover some of that for sure. And then also just thinking about what other candidates may be bringing to the table already and making sure that you're able to do that and something else.
Yeah,
So more than just increasing revenue or like fixing some process or, being a good teammate or working hard, right? It's going to need to be that and more.
yeah,
So start down that framework, and then go from there. One of the people is asking, do we offer any assistance for navigating technical interviews? So in general, no, we do not. Albert and I are not engineers by trade. And so if you are looking for how to prepare for like a software engineering specific coding interview, we will not be able to provide context for that. But one thing we've noticed too, though, is you need lead code, you don't need us, right? And at the end of the day, if you are able to pass your lead code interviews, then the reason why you're not getting hired is your non-technical interviews. And so that's one area you also want to make sure you are balancing and practicing. But no, we will not be providing coding specific interviews for that.
yeah. There's some discussion with some technical folks about starting that, and you may see that at some point later this year.
Yeah,
Um, I
that'd
think
be
the
cool.
other thing I also wanted to mention was that, look, so I want to also just put this out there too that, look, Corey and I have a lot of free stuff out there, YouTube channel, Facebook group, webinars like this. And so if you want to DIY your interview process, I want to let you know that that is entirely possible if you were to go and get everything that we have. The other thing I want to also mention in here, though, is that what our boot camps offer over here at Albert's List is also a chance at accountability. So, your job search is a very, very isolating process. Um, your interviewing can be a very isolating process when you're getting ambiguous emails at 3 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon from an automated ATS platform. And so we want to bring everyone who's working towards the same goal together into one room so that you can get to a point where after 5 weeks, you can get into this summer hiring season and you can feel confident that you're going to do really well. So that's also another thing just to keep in mind. And you do get a lot from Corey's mock interviews every week as well. And we want to be able to personalize that for each and every one of you. So if you join the boot camp, we will let you know when the event happens in Belmont because that's not been decided yet at the Devil's Canyon Brewery. That's something that you get to do if you sign up as part of the boot camp.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Oh, and then also, to add on to that, yes, we do have a lot of free content out there. We also have the mock interview sessions, but a few caveats, right? And you can totally DIY and self-teach yourself. It's definitely possible for sure. I myself am pretty much self-taught, and then we've just taken all the concepts that we've learned over time and then actually turned that into actual curriculum that has been scalable over and tested over time. But one thing I will caution people in a super competitive job market like this, I don't know how many interviews you're getting, right? If each of you are getting like 5 interviews a week, it's okay to try to DIY this yourself. Maybe you fail a few interviews, it takes you like a month or two, right? You bomb a couple, you fail a few, and then it starts to get better. Totally makes sense. But if you're only getting like one interview a month or even less than that, you only got a couple shots at this, right? And so making sure you're making the most of all the opportunities that you get, making sure you're setting yourself up for success is something we would highly encourage you to do. Also, if your dream company has just contacted you for a dream job that you want to make sure you crush these interviews. If you do not pass the interview with your dream company, you will not be able to interview there for sometimes up to a year. And if it's really bad, you may not get to interview there ever. So make sure you put your best foot forward out there. And we do have the mock interview sessions, as Albert has mentioned. However, we will be prioritizing members of the boot camp over the free members. And so keep that in mind as well. you would basically be kind of be at the mercy of me and Albert's schedule of whenever we can slot you in to do free mock interview sessions.
Yep. And I see that we do have a few of you who've signed up. That discount for webinar attendee does end at 6:30 Pacific. So you will not be getting those $20 off after this one. Let's see. Norbert asks, can you help with career trajectory for somebody who is looking for a new career direction?
As in, are you trying to change careers, Norbert, or trying to help your like get elevated to the next level, get a promotion, etc.?
And while he responds to that one, Mimi asks, what do you do when the interviewer does all the talking? Do you interrupt? So awkward. And or what if the interviewer hasn't clearly read your resume?
Oh, those are always kind of awkward sometimes when that
Very awkward.
happens. Yeah. But I think if they clearly haven't read your resume, it actually works out in your favor, right? Because you can go through the whole literal, this was my resume, this is what I've done, and then everything will seem new and impressive to them. So it actually kind of works out in your favor. But if the interviewer is doing a lot of talking, either that could mean that you're doing really well and they feel like they've got a good banter and they don't really need to interview you. It could just be more of a formality. Or they're just really bad at interviewing, and you may want to flag this to your recruiter afterwards. That's something I always mention too. Or like maybe you have an interviewer with a very strong accent and communication became a little bit difficult. You weren't able to truly understand the questions they were asking you, and you felt like you weren't being set up for success. As soon as your interview was done, I would go ahead and send an email to your recruiter and kind of let them know what was happening, right? So in both of those scenarios, that's what I would do. I saw someone in here say, I made my career in marketing right out of college and made it to an international marketing director. Amazing. Then I was unemployed, did freelance for 10 years. Should I play this up or down? I think, well, Albert, please, this is your area of expertise. What would you recommend?
Let me see. Where was this question? I was saying, um,
It's
oh, somebody
Kai.
says, is there another boot camp planned after this 5 week one? Well, we could always plan another one. We're doing a more general boot camp possibly after this one, but let me talk with Corey. I think there's always an incentive to do so. So I made my career out of college to international marketing director. Then I was unemployed and did freelance for 10 years. Okay. Should I play this up or you should play this up because I think it demonstrates that you are a self-starter who is independently minded and can be very self motivated in how and what you do. So you should absolutely play it up because it is a strength of yours. Um, and then I think to reduce any risk of you being ignored, I would focus on the results that you bring that you've done for your clients over the last 10 years are absolutely irresistible and cannot be ignored. So, Norbert says, yes, I am looking for a new career,
Oh,
FYI.
okay.
So,
Amazing, amazing. Keep in mind this entire boot camp is going to be customized and focused on interviews. And so that's definitely the important part of the job search. But for you, in your particular case, you'll be switching careers. And so you're also going to want to make sure you're able to craft a good resume for yourself, making sure you're able to highlight your transferable skills, maybe even building a portfolio if you need to, doing some side projects or doing work as an entrepreneur so you can actually put some relevant stuff up on the resume to help you make that career switch. But a lot of our content is going to be focused purely on the interview process itself. So just to keep that in mind.
so for everyone who's asking for the details, the boot camp begins May 6th and runs until June 17th with a break for Memorial Day. So, and so this boot camp is going to be every single Monday at 5 p.m. Yeah.
Yep.
So let's see. How many will be in the boot camp? Is there a cap? So we have our first 10 tickets being sold at 247. With a discount, it's 227. And then ticket prices will go up starting this Friday. Since, what we really do here is a lot of group coaching. And if you were to do this individualized with Corey, it would probably be $247 a session. Um, what if by a miracle you get hired at a company while enrolled in the boot camp? Well, I would like to think that if you get hired at a company while enrolled in the boot camp, that Corey and I are doing our jobs. So that's that's what it is. And if you're still in the boot camp and you get to continue because you paid for your tuition, you can pass on your skills to others who may be able to use it. Capped to a number of participants. So our participants are generally between 15 to 20 people, Eileen. And it really depends on the state of the job market. The job market has been really interesting as of late. So our last job search boot camp that went 8 weeks, we ended up having 22 participants in there, everyone from boot camp graduates all the way up to VPs of marketing. And so, what we'll really get from this is you learn how to answer interview questions as it pertains to your industry and your job that you're going to hear across all different themes of interview questions. Yeah, so the boot camp does include some Q&A sessions. You get to ask questions during the course, and you also get to have your own, or rather, you get to have office hours. So come into the office hours, ask your questions there. You have my email. You can email me. I try to respond within 24 to 48 hours. And if you want to bother me over Messenger, on Facebook Messenger or LinkedIn, you can do that too. Lorraine asks, what should you or should not say and tell me about yourself and an example of how you would do it?
Okay, what you should say. Well, I think if it's possible, and it is one of the more advanced interview techniques, is ask them to give you context on the role first, the role and the scope, responsibilities, ideal target experience, etc., skills they need, don't need, and then if you can, try to tailor customize your answer towards whatever it is that they're specifically saying, right? What you should not do is recap exactly what's already on the resume itself because they've most likely already seen it. I know someone in the chat said they noticed that the interviewer clearly did not read their resume, but even still, you should in general try to give a different version of yourself that's not clearly evident on the resume. So that could either be talking about projects that may not have been on the resume or drawing connections to certain projects. Like if you're doing a career switch, for example, you're going to want to draw connections for the interviewer that show them you're still qualified for the role. You just have a different type of skill set that you've maybe gathered from 4 or 5 different jobs as opposed to just doing one job your whole career, and an example of how you would do it. So for me, when I'm interviewing for roles like for a recruiting position, the first like 10 to 15 seconds of my tell me about myself is always like a high level overview of my scope and responsibilities and industry expertise as a recruiter because I know that's what they care about, right? So I would say I've been a technical and non-technical recruiter for the last 5 years. I've worked at a Fortune 5 company, and I've done full cycle recruiting both for product management, CPU architecture, machine learning and AI, all the way down to HR roles. My primary focus has been on the director and executive level and above. So just in those first 15 seconds, they can tell if I'm the right candidate for them or not. And obviously, I wouldn't say some of these things if they said they're looking for someone who hires junior candidates. I would just leave out the part where I only hire the director level plus. But knowing that I'm full cycle is important, knowing that I've done roles internationally, that I've been a lead, all those things are going to be important. And then the remaining like 30 seconds to a minute of my pitch is usually like really impressive accomplishments that I feel like are unique to myself outside of just doing my regular day job of hiring people.
Yep. All right, cool. Any other questions? Here to answer any questions and really like if you've done this before with Albert's list, you know that I don't try and hold anything behind, any curtains. I try to be as transparent as possible. Um, and I'm just try to make this work for all of you as much as we possibly can. And once again, let me share the link with the attendee discount that ends here in 20 minutes. Feel free to copy and paste this if you need some time to think about it. And we also have a mock interview that's coming up this coming Thursday that
Thursday.
actually is going to be a half hour earlier. So Note that on your calendar before I change that. And that's with a financial advisor slash corporate leader. So if you've ever wanted to show up to a mock interview and ask someone else questions, you can do that too. And in this case, you're going to ask questions to somebody who wants to be the boss. So come in with your tough questions and have some fun. Um,
Someone in the chat says, why would a company block you from interviewing for a
yeah.
year or forever? So if your interviews are unfortunately really poor, then a lot of the ATS systems, they will mark you that your interviews were very poor and they don't want to speak to you for a while. And so it like so some people have called it like being blacklisted, right? Um, and so that's kind of how you would do it. You either get blacklisted by pissing somebody off who works there, getting a really negative referral or reference, like maybe the CEO or someone worked directly with you and doesn't like you, or you like unfortunately totally bomb an interview, then they wouldn't want to speak to you for a while.
Deirdre, thank you for signing up from
They will
Spain.
be recorded. Sessions will be recorded, so you don't have to wake up at 3 a.m.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to be up at 3 a.m., I mean, I'd be honored. I mean, like, I know the Spanish eat dinner really late. I don't know if it's 3 a.m. late. But yeah. Francesca asks, um, does the boot camp also help with your confidence level? You know what? I would say yes, because when you know what it is that you're talking about and what stories you're telling and how you value in those stories bring to the roles that you've done in the past and what you'll do in the future, um, you are going to have a level of confidence um, that is going to be really helpful for what it is that you create. So, I think your confidence will naturally increase. Um,
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely. And I think knowing why your interviews may not be going well and being able to actually work on that is definitely going to increase your confidence also. And I'm going to speed run through these, Albert, because I do have to drop for another phone call and another meeting. Um, I have been applying to sales roles for B2B and or full sales cycles, though I have more sales development front and non-full sales cycle. How do I position myself best to be considered? So you're going to want to focus here on being able to address the elephant in the room in your particular case. So their main concern is going to be that you don't have full cycle sales experience. And so being able to alleviate that concern during your tell me about yourself or even some of the stories that you choose to highlight is going to be really important. If they're choosing to interview you, keep in mind they don't care that you haven't done the full cycle because they've chosen to interview you anyways. And so making sure you're using the right stories, highlighting the right skills is going to be important. And you just need to be really kick ass at what you are doing, and that's probably what they're going to use in order to justify a hiring decision. How much info does a previous employer can give to a potential company that you are interviewing? How much info if how many info a previous employer can give? Oh, if they check for references? Well, when they call whoever you list on your references will literally be able to say whatever they want. So be sure you pick the right people to give references, because you never know what they're going to say. Yes, it is roughly around an hour each time. How do you know if you're blacklisted? Well, if you're applying for jobs at that same company after you've already interviewed, and it's for a job that you know you are 100% a fit for, and you are not getting interviews, then you're most likely blacklisted.
all right, let's do one final question. And by the way, we are almost sold out of early bird tickets, so I've actually added a few more, and we're going to
Nice,
extend this through Friday. So
nice, nice, nice,
your
nice.
discount code ends in 19 minutes. Please use that if that's what you want. Um, we'll be sending you emails throughout the week. And then let's do one final question here. Chris, did you feel like your question was answered? Eden was asking, how should we view interviews? Like, if we've gotten to the point of being selected for an interview, doesn't that mean they think we meet at least the minimum qualifications for the job and what you bring to the table? However, if you get to the interview stage, should we see that as an opportunity to prove that we're the most qualified or that you'd be a good fit at the company? I guess what I'm wondering is what questions the interviewers are wanting to answer by interviewing potential candidates and how they are ruling people out. So, how are they filtering people?
Exactly, right. And so as everyone had put in the chat, being a good fit is not enough to get hired in a competitive job market like today. You need to be the best possible candidate that they're interviewing for the role right now. And so that's what the interviews are designed to do. They're giving you opportunities to highlight your areas of expertise, your special sauce, your differentiators, so that they can actually be confident in choosing the best person out of everyone who's a good fit. Right? Because everyone's going to be a good fit who's interviewing because they're not going to want to waste their time spending hours interviewing a bunch of people if you weren't even a good fit to begin with.
So if you used to work at Microsoft, you were laid off and you were interviewed for another company and they decide to call Microsoft, how much can Microsoft disclose to that new company you are interviewing?
So, Chris, they can't call Microsoft, right? We're going to ask you for a reference, maybe from someone who used to work with you at Microsoft, and it's your decision on who you put down to call. Like, I don't have a number for Microsoft, right? Like, how am I going to call Microsoft and be like, hey, I'm trying to hire this person named Chris, last name, right? Can you connect me with somebody who works at Microsoft who was their manager? Like, there's no 1-800 call Microsoft. And so I can only call a specific person. So it's going to have to be based on who you share with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. So you have to put your immediate manager as a reference. No, you don't.
Not, I wouldn't put the one that you work with now because then you don't want your current manager to know that you're looking for a new job. But I would say it's always good to put a previous manager from a different company if you know they liked you, right? If you maybe you had a really bad boss or you hated your boss, don't put them as a reference.
Yep. All right.
Cool.
Wonderful. Okay.
All right, Albert, I
So
gotta drop.
yep, this webinar will be on our YouTube channel. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and copy that link for the discount immediately here that you can get. And we'll see you either next this Thursday for our upcoming mock interview, or we'll see you next Monday for another iteration of this, or we'll see you in the boot camp starting May 6th. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great wonderful rest of the week. Bye bye.